My family, I grew up in a Democratic Party that was fighting to make sure everybody had the right to vote. And all of a sudden, the party was saying, you can only vote for the guy that we want you to vote for.
A lot of people never expected to see you with President Trump.
Yeah, especially my wife never expected it. But, I was texting with Mark Ruffalo the other day. He's very mad at me.
Okay. Incredible Hulk?
Yeah, Incredible Hulk. Public health was my biggest issue. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, we were the healthiest country on earth. Today, we're the sickest country on earth.
A lot of people don't understand how sickle cell really affects black families.
Where we have a cure. The cure is very expensive. It costs several $100,000.
Appreciate that from my people, and I appreciate your time. As these Secret Service, they moving around. It's like it's time to go, Doc. You get to get on out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of FlyZoneUSA. This is your big OG TrickTrick live in the Blue Room on 8 Mile. And today, my very, very, very special guest, really, when I woke up this morning, I said to myself, no matter where you come from, no matter what you've been through, you can dream as big as you want to dream, and whatever you want to do, you can do it. And this is living proof, because in the Blue Room today, I have a very, very special guest, my good friend, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Sir, thank you so much for coming again. Thank you for coming. Thank you for hanging out. How's that diet going?
It's good.
Good. You got me when you said you eat red meat and fermented vegetables.
Yeah. I'm not crazy about the fermented vegetables, but they're really good for you.
This is really only what, sauerkraut, or do you?
It's sauerkraut, kimchi. You can get almost anything fermented. So I also eat a lot of yogurt.
Okay.
But it keeps your microbiome cranking, and that helps you cognitively. It builds muscle mass. It really, I try about everything. I try peptides. I've tried stem cells, all kinds of supplements and stuff. But it's all kind of voodoo. You don't really know, does it work? Does it not work? And but the one thing that really was transformative for me was the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
It changed everything overnight.
That's because it's different for other people. Like, I can't eat red meat. Right? It makes my stomach hurt. So
Well, you can eat other kinds of protein. Can you eat fish?
Well, I just went vegan. So I went vegan 10 years ago, and that's what worked for me. I'm 240 pounds, fastest kid on the block. So, I'm on stage for an hour
if it's working
every
for
time.
You,
So you grew up in one of America's most, famous families. What was it like growing up?
I had a very magical childhood. Trick. I had 11 brothers and sisters. And at the time of my sort of first real memories, my uncle was president.
Right.
And my father was the attorney general. And our house, which is right across the river from Washington in Virginia, was kind of a satellite White House. There were cabinet meetings there, and that was a very exciting time. It was the height of the civil rights movement, and my uncle and my father were deeply involved in that. The orders, my dad integrated the University of Alabama in 1962, and the orders to do that were given for the National Guard, 20,000 National Guardsmen to go down there. Were given from my house when James Meredith got into the University of Mississippi. All the big protest movements, the Selma March, the Freedom Riders, a lot of that stuff was happening around me.
Right.
And then, it was, I had 29 cousins, and we were all kind of living in the same town next to each other. So it was really an extraordinary community, and it was a magical time.
That's beautiful. That's how we grew up on the east side of Detroit. Everybody was on the same block. Grandma made sure everybody stayed close. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. That's beautiful. So tell me this, a lot of people never expected to see you with President Trump. How did that actually come about?
Yeah, especially my wife never expected it, but or my family. It was a big turn for me because I was raised, in probably the most prominent Democratic family in the country.
Right.
I ran for president originally because I didn't think that President Biden was capable of being president again.
Indeed.
And also the Democratic Party was going in a direction that I thought was leaving its values behind. The Democratic Party had always been the anti-war party, and suddenly they were the party of war. They were, the party of they had always been skeptical about the intelligence agencies, the CIA, and they had the head of the CIA speak at their convention. They were the party that defended free speech, and during COVID, they began censoring people, including me. I was removed at White House orders. I was removed from Instagram, and I was slow walked or censored on all the other platforms. I had 1 million followers on Instagram at that time, but I saw it all around me. Doctors who wanted to treat patients with alternatives to the vaccine were censored. They were delicensed. They were marginalized, demonized, and people who resisted, all of this government intrusion were marginalized. And the Democratic Party was, behind all that, and it just seemed to me inconsistent with their values. So I ran, and I ran as a Democrat, but then the party started suing me because they only wanted Biden to win. So they started canceling the primaries. They sued me to get me off the ballot, and they sued me in 12 states to get me off the ballot. So they were using lawfare against me to stop me from running. And my family, I grew up in a Democratic Party that was fighting to make sure everybody had the right to vote.
Indeed.
And all of a sudden, the party was saying, you can only vote for the guy that we want you to vote for. And clearly, he was incapacitated.
Period.
Yeah. So then they made sure that no matter how many primaries I won, that I could not get the nomination. So I left the party and became independent, which was kind of insurmountable because I had to get 1 million signatures, and they had different rules in every state, but I did it.
That's right.
And then they wouldn't let me participate in the debates, even though I had the polling numbers where they were supposed to. And at that point, President Trump had been reaching out to me from the beginning and saying to me, I'm aligned with you on all these issues. I'm against the war, I'm against NAFTA. I want to get people housing. I want to, help the American middle class. And those had all been Democratic issues. And then he was also very good on health. We have, public health was my biggest issue. We have the sickest kids now in the history of our country. We have the sickest kids in the world.
Yes.
When I was a kid, we were the healthiest country on earth. And we spend 0 on chronic disease.
Right.
Today, we're the sickest country on earth. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician would see 1 case of type 2 diabetes over a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 38% of American teens are diabetic or pre-diabetic, and I know a lot of people who have diabetes. Well, that was, unknown when we were kids.
Right.
The autism rates, I'm sure kids with autism.
A lot.
When I was a kid, it was 0.8 per 10,000, so less than 1 in 10,000 Americans. Today, it's 1 in every 31 Americans. In California, it's 1 in every 19 kids. Wow. And 1 in every 12.5 boys. And, I was looking at this and saying, something is going wrong. These kids are being poisoned by something.
Right.
And I was silenced and attacked for saying that. And yet President Trump started saying the same thing. What is wrong with our kids? Why are they so sick? Why are they so damaged? And then ultimately, he asked me to come to Milwaukee at the beginning of the convention, and we talked about us joining the campaigns. And then 3 weeks later, I ended up joining his campaign, and I lost a lot of friends. I lost about probably more than 90% of my friends. Yeah. I know.
I
We're in
did
the
too,
same
but
club.
fuck them. You're not my friend because of the way I
I
choose
got a lot
one or
of
the
new
other.
friends.
Yeah, I'm cool. Yeah, we good. What's something that you think people don't understand about Trump? Because like you just said, he actually cared for the same values as you
Yeah.
and the same points as you, and you were, like you said, come from the biggest Democratic family and represented so many things that helped, the Democratic movement when it was, something that benefited Americans. What is something that you think people don't understand about him?
When I grew up, the Democratic Party was the party of the poor. And in fact, even in 1970, the Democrats owned about 30% of the wealth in this country and Republicans owned 70%. Well, that was the company, the party of the big corporations and control, and they were conservative in that they didn't want to change anything, including the civil rights laws, et cetera. And now it's flipped. So now the Republican Party controls 30% of the wealth and the Democrats control 70%. And they're controlled by these elites, a lot of them on the different coasts. And, to me, they've gone crazy. And President Trump is talking about all the things that Democrats used to talk about, which is rebuilding the middle class, challenging corporate power. I mean, he's let me go in there and challenge the pharmaceutical companies.
Right,
We
that
made
was
them
big.
right. The pharmaceutical companies were charging us 10 times what they were charging Europeans. The same drug made in the same factory. So, for example, Ozempic, when I came in, cost the list price in this country was $1,350. In London, Hamburg, Munich, Paris, it was $88 for the same drug. And all of our drugs, we were paying 3, 5, 10 times what they were paying in Europe. And President Trump said to me, he said, we're going to change this. I want to pay the lowest prices in the world. Every president had promised that. Biden promised it, Obama promised it, Clinton promised it, Bush promised it. None of them did it. We got it done. So we made deals with the 17 biggest drug companies, and President Trump used the tariffs, the threat of the tariffs. He told France, because we don't want to bankrupt the pharmaceutical companies, we want them to continue to do research and develop new drugs, so he didn't want to bankrupt them. He told the Europeans, you got to raise your prices so that you're paying like what we're paying, the same amount or more. And they all agreed to do that because of the threat of the tariffs. Nobody has used American power before to make them do better deals for us. And now he used that same power to start building factories here. During the entire Biden administration, there was only $1 trillion of investment in new factories in this country. Now it's $18 trillion just in 1 year of the Trump administration. And it's because of the tariffs. All of these companies are saying, we're not going to build in Europe and sell our stuff to America. We have to build here, and because otherwise we have to pay the tariffs.
Right.
So he was able to, you've seen the automobile industry in this state.
Right.
It's booming now.
Right.
It's booming now because
Grand Cherokees everywhere.
Exactly. But, we were, the Cadillacs and everything else. All of those factories are now booming. Some of them are working, 24-hour day shifts. And it's because, President Trump did that because he wants jobs for Americans. And he put America first.
Yeah.
We were being ripped off by the entire world.
Yeah.
And he wants to bring that money home and the jobs home. And you look what happened to this country over the past 40 years where all the factories closed. They went to Mexico, they went to Europe, they went to Canada. Now they're all coming back.
That's right.
And in the pharmaceutical industry, which I regulate, there's probably 20 plants being built right now to make pharmaceuticals in this country rather than making them in Europe or Asia and selling them to us.
Right.
And those jobs are going to Americans, and that wealth is now going to our country rather than foreign countries.
That's right, as it should. America first. Definitely America first.
You know, you asked about, I was talking to, I was texting with Mark Ruffalo the other day. He's very mad at me.
Okay. Incredible Hulk?
Yeah, Incredible Hulk. He's got really bad Trump derangement syndrome. And he said, one of the things he said, you're working for the stupidest man in America. Now, you can say a lot about Trump, and a lot of Democrats believe, yeah, he's stupid. And I actually at one point believed that. I believe he's very superficial. He's probably never read a book. Now that I know him, he has like an encyclopedic mind. He knows everything. He knows about music. He has these incredible, and about the musicians, he has incredible eclectic. He loves music. He loves theater. He knows everything about sports. He can out-talk you, and on every sport. He knows everything about Wall Street, who made their money, how they made the money, what the deals look like. And then he knows foreign policy. One time when I was on his plane with him, we started talking about troop strength in Syria and Iran and Israel and Jordan. Mm-hmm. And he's got a very beautiful hand, and he drew a perfect picture of the Mideast with all the countries, and he put the troop strength on every border of all those countries. Now that's something, I thought he was, when I was, in the Democratic Party, I thought he's a bombastic guy who doesn't really know anything and doesn't really care about detail or have a grasp for it. But he has an extraordinary grasp for detail, and then also in architecture and building. He's doing what the old style presidents used to do, which is he's taken all the monuments in Washington. There were 22 fountains in Washington. Not one of them worked. They're all covered with graffiti. He cleaned them up. They're all working again. Washington, when I got there, was just, it was crime-ridden. There were murders all the time. He brought the National Guard in, and now it's one of the safest cities in the country. And it should be. It's our national capital.
It should be.
And he did that to Memphis and all these other cities that were high crime, where they invited him in. And, the Democratic cities won't let that happen, and the crime is going through the roof.
It is.
And he said, I'll make the National Guard available to all of you so that we can reduce crime. He's been incredibly successful, and most of the stuff that he does is stuff that the Democrats have been promising to do for years. Because he's doing it, they hate it.
Right.
And they get themselves, listen, I grew up before we knew about what Cesar Chavez was doing. I grew up, I spent 10 years working with Cesar Chavez. And up until between 1983 and 1993, my father was very close to him, was working for the farm workers. During that period, he had two big issues. One of those issues was pesticides, which were poisoning workers. And that's what I was working with him on, because that was kind of my forte. The other issue he had was closing the border. As he said, everybody who comes across that border illegally is competing with my workers in the field.
Come on, man.
And their wages are going down, and their conditions of their labor are being negotiated down because there's this huge influx. The Democrats were always against people coming over the border because they thought the corporations want that in order to compete with American workers and drive down wages. And the American unions always were fighting to shut the border. All of a sudden, when Trump said, I want to shut the border, the Democrats were, since he said that, we're now for an open border. And, they let 20 million people come across.
20 million people.
20 million people in 4 years coming across.
Speaking of
and
which,
they lost a lot of the kids.
Exactly. Speaking of which, a lot of people don't know about 300 and something thousand children.
375,000 kids were lost.
375,000 children were lost.
These are kids that that came across the border without their parents.
Without their parents.
Yeah, and why were they crossing the border? Some of them were, owned by the cartel, and they were being sent up. They're young, maybe 14-year-old kids who were being sent up to work. Some of them were being sex trafficked. Some of them were anchors so that they could come, and then their parents would come later. But there was a lot of different reasons people were sending kids across. And when they got to the border, they would be detained by by my agency. They'd be detained by the Border Patrol, then handed to my agency, which is HHS, which has a division called the Refugees and Resettlement. And my agency was in front of them. The head of that agency, Xavier Becerra, who's now the front runner for governor in California, let me explain what happened. During the Trump administration, Trump deported a lot of people. And the Democrats said, "Oh, you're keeping kids in cages," which that agency was. They were keeping them in, jail cells, and which is what the detention looked like. And so, when Biden came in, he said, "I don't want anybody accusing me of keeping kids in cages. So as soon as we get them, let's release them to whoever comes." So these people were coming to pick them up and saying, "I'm the parent." One guy pretended to be the parent of 42 children, picked everyone out. We have no idea what happened to those kids. Why did a guy need 42 children who were completely unrelated to him? There was no validation, no verification, no attempt to see who it was taking the kid. They lost track of 375,000 kids. We're now finding them. We found about 137,000 of them, but a lot of them you just can't find. There was about 60 kids who were sent to one address. When we looked at that address, it was a container, a steel container in the middle of a parking lot. And that's what the Biden administration was doing. It was just allowing these sex traffickers and other kind of traffickers. A lot of them were sent to work at slaughterhouses and picking fruits in the fields and doing these other kind of
slaves.
They were slaves. And so we stopped that. Now everybody who comes in has to validate their relationship. We DNA test them to make sure they're related to that kid.
Right.
We check their employment records. We check their salaries, what they got in the bank. We check their driver's license, and nobody gets a kid unless we know that is the kid's parent or relative.
Good job.
None of that was done during the Biden administration, and it's a huge, huge tragedy. They became the biggest child trafficker in the world. My agency was the single biggest child trafficker in the world, and it was all from Xavier Becerra. Wow. He also, my agency loses about $100 billion a year to theft, people stealing.
HHS.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to tell you how?
$100 billion
$100 billion.
in theft?
Yes, let me tell you some of the ways they do it. One is we shut down 800 hospices. You know what a hospice is?
Yes.
Where you go to die.
Right.
Typically, if you go to a hospice, you leave within 18 days because you're dying.
Illness is terminal.
Right. We started looking at these hospices in Los Angeles, and the people never died. They were there, or 2 or 3 years later, they were there, and we're paying $6,000 a month. So those hospices, when we went and looked for them, they
Per
were
patient?
Yeah.
Shit.
We found a hotel room with 29 hospices in it. I mean, a hotel, every room was a hospice, and none of them had any patients. They were just addresses, and the guys who owned them were, they were Estonians, Armenians, and people from Eastern Europe who were getting the patient numbers. They were stealing them from doctors' offices. They were also going into poor neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and they'd say to the people, we'll give you this $375 flat screen TV. You give us your patient number, and we're going to enroll you in this hospice. You don't ever have to go.
Right.
We're just going to enroll you, and then we'll charge Medicaid $6,000 a month forever. And the guy never dies, of course, because he was never sick. And that's one of the ways. Another way, there was Cubans in Miami who were selling durable medical equipment. So this is like wheelchairs, knee braces, these kind of things. Mm-hmm. They never had any durable medical equipment. Again, we found hotels that every room in it was a durable medical equipment company. Like about a fifth of the durable medical equipment companies in the country were in South Florida, and none of them were selling durable medical equipment, but we were paying for it. As soon as we busted them, they all got on planes to Cuba. So it was just a scam. In Minnesota, they were doing the same thing with autism, with kids who had autism. They'd get a crooked doctor to say every kid in the family had autism, and then they would get people come in. All you needed to be an autism counselor was to have a high school diploma. They were paying $600 an hour to friends, relatives, other just crooks.
Yeah.
To pretend they were taking care of these kids. The kids were never getting any care. We were spending, in 2020, we were spending $32 million a year on all the autism cases in Minnesota. By 2024, we were spending $442 million. So $400 million a year was being stolen, and that's what they were doing all over the country. Why did that happen? Because Xavier Becerra came in. We had at that time, we had 80 people in our agency who were doing program integrity. That means they were looking for these thefts. And he fired all but 6 of them and said, we're not doing program integrity anymore. Now we're just doing enrollments. Enroll as many people as you can. A lot of them were the illegal aliens who were coming across. They're not entitled to Medicaid. They were enrolling them anyway. And then they were, paying out all of this money. And it's money that was being stolen from the American people. So we were losing about $100 billion a year.
When an American person has to actually fight tooth and nail to get benefits that they deserve and that they need. I mean, I know
That's
a
right.
few elderly people and a few people who are definitely disabled that literally have to fight, and they're getting like $20, $32 a month in food stamps. It's like, but these people come into our country illegally, get all these benefits when our own people
cannot get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's wrong. There were, on Medicaid, I think we had 2.2 million illegal aliens, and then.
Now, how much money does that?
That's a lot of money.
Taken from
Americans,
people.
And we doubled the amount in 4 years. We doubled the amount we were spending on Medicaid, mainly because there was all these illegal people signed up for it. We found one guy who was registered for Medicaid in 12 different states. And then we found many people, millions of people who were enrolled in both Medicaid and Obamacare. Most of them didn't know they were even enrolled in Medicaid.
Wow.
But the insurance company, are collecting the money. Mm-hmm. And so they would just sign up people, and they would get these brokers to sign up people. They'd give them money for everybody they signed up, but a lot of the people didn't even know they were being signed up.
Did the what is it called, Doge, did that system come in and actually find all that, or was this because it was
Doge found a lot of it, but Doge was really the first year, and we really started finding all of this fraud in the last 6 months.
Wow. So what steps are being done to actually prevent that?
Another thing Becerra did was he said, we're going to have a new system called pay and catch, because a lot of times a bill comes in an invoice comes in that we have to pay. Mm-hmm. We know that invoice is fraudulent. How do we know that? We can find out from AI that doctor who wrote that invoice has been busted for fraud 22 times. Or there's other reasons. There's all kinds of ways that we can find out now that we know that that invoice is crooked. Becerra adopted a program, you pay it anyway, and then we'll claw it back. And of course, none of it ever got clawed back. All this money was going out, so we canceled that. We now look at every claim for fraud before we pay it. And we're shutting down all that. We shut down 800 hospices in Los Angeles. We didn't get a single call from a congressman or from a business owner saying, oh, you shut down my hospice, and all these patients are on the street. None of them, because they were all crooked and they knew they were crooked. Right. So, and then we shut down Minnesota, all of the autism fraud in Minnesota, and those people were stealing money from kids who actually need it.
Right. So do you think that the people who actually, like you say, the congressmen, the businessmen, who's getting the kickback from this to allow it to keep happening?
It's hard to say. It's hard to point to a certain, we can, we buzz people and we found all kinds of people who are making money, like the Cubans in Miami, the Armenians, the Somalis in Minnesota. But it's hard to point to a single person. It was really just a policy of the Democratic Party. We want this money to go out the door. We want it to get into the states. We don't really want to, look at it too carefully. Right. And that it was just it was a bad policy.
Right. Now, because I know you on the clock. You're making your moves. You just came from somewhere. Well, a good friend of mine, good money. He coaches football where he just left Clinton Township. Just made a major announcement up there with mental health being a big thing in mind. Big advocate for mental health. What was that all about in Clinton?
We were making an announcement of $700 million that we're now going to give for addiction service and homelessness. And we made it at a place that really is an extraordinary facility. It's called the Easter Seals Morgue Community Development Center in Clinton Township. Mm-hmm. And what's really good about that is it's open 24 hours a day. You don't need insurance. They take Medicaid, or if you don't have any insurance, you can go in. You go there, and within 20 minutes, you're talking to a counselor. If you call them up, within 12 minutes, you're talking to a counselor, and they start doing your intake. And then it takes care of the addict from the beginning all the way through long-term recovery. The problem with addiction treatment in our country is fragmented. There's one guy who's running the detox. There's another people in law enforcement. They grab the addict. They put him in the detox. They hand him over, and they never hear from him again. The detox hands him to a rehab for 28 days, and the rehab puts him in housing or in a job. And so you have the Department of Labor, your Department of Housing, you have the law enforcement, and you have my department, which pays for the rehab and the detox. None of them are talking to each other, and none of them are taking control of that addict and bringing them through the process and taking responsibility for his recovery. And that's why this program is so successful, because it looks at all of them, and we're now going to fund programs like this all over the country.
Beautiful, beautiful. Detroit next.
Yeah.
Detroit. I think
people from Detroit can go to this facility.
Okay, good, beautiful.
They get people from the UP, from the Upper Peninsula. They get people from Detroit. Anybody in Michigan,
right, and
go to this facility. If you can get a ride down there, it's a half hour from here.
Right. One thing real quick, the sickle cell. A lot of people don't understand how sickle cell really affects Black families. Can you touch on that a little bit, and what steps are being done to prevent and fix this? Yeah.
Sickle cell, as you know, is a deficiency in the red blood cells where they become they look like a sickle rather than a ball. Mm-hmm. And it was actually a life-saving evolutionary development in Africa, where malaria kills millions of people a year. The malaria bacteria cannot breed in a sickle cell, so it was actually an advantage over there to have sickle cell anemia. But now you come here, it is one of the most agonizing diseases. I've talked to a lot of people who have it, and it's absolutely debilitating. People can't get out of bed in the morning. They're in agonizing pain all day long. And what we've done now is we've developed a system. We actually did it in South Carolina first, but now it's moving across the country, where we have a cure. The cure is very expensive. It costs several $100,000. The insurance companies like it because if that person with sickle cell continues to live and does not get treatment, it costs millions of dollars. So the insurance companies are willing to spend maybe $400,000 or $500,000 at the outset and cure that person for life. And we now have a cure for sickle cell anemia. And the question was, how do you get it to people because it's so expensive?
So yeah.
We made deals with Medicaid and Medicare and with the private insurance companies that they will cover this now. So this is now being done. I've talked to people who have done this and they're completely cured. Women who take it cannot have children. But so there's a downside. But for them, it's a godsend because, it's a life of agonizing pain. Now they're free from it.
Right.
And it's really a miracle drug. And, came out of our, biopharmaceutical industry, and the pharmaceutical companies are working with us and the insurance companies and Medicaid and Medicare to make sure we can get it to everybody eventually.
God bless you. That's amazing. I appreciate that. Appreciate that from my people, and I appreciate your time. As these Secret Service, they moving around. It's like it's time to go, Doc. You get to get on out of here. I appreciate your time.
Sure, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, man. And anything I can do to help, and thank you for the mental health investment. Anything you need in the city of Detroit, phone call.
I know where to come. If I need to get a traffic ticket fixed, can you help me with that?
I sure can.
Okay.
Thank you so much. FlyZoneUSA, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Next time.